Hi, in this video we're going to take a very brief look at a series of add-ons for Google Forms that I hope you find useful. The first is something called Form Limiter. And when you check on a form and go to the Responses tab, you'll see that there's a little switch to decide whether it's accepting or not accepting responses. Form Limiter works by looking for a trigger, and we'll talk about types of triggers in a minute, and switching this from accepting to not accepting so that the form closes down. Okay, the first option you have when you set a limit in Form Limiter is to set one for date or time. When you first open it, it'll look like this, but you can pick date or time. Simply enter in a particular date and a particular time. There is a message underneath that will be displayed when the page is closed. So when someone goes to fill out the form but it's no longer accepting responses, you can customize this. And you can also check the box to have an email sent to you at the time that the form is closed, just as a reminder. You save and enable, and people can fill out this form up until this time and date, after which they can't. The second option for Form Limiter is maximum number of responses. And basically, if I was looking for 10 chaperones to chaperone this dance, I might just say when the number of responses is greater than 9, shut it down. So once it does hit 10, they will get again this message, and I can email myself when that happens. It's a good idea in this case since I don't already know the time and date when it might happen. And that form's ready to go. The third option is a little trickier. Third option is destination spreadsheet cell value. And you can pick a spreadsheet, hopefully the spreadsheet that's containing the information from this particular form. You can pick out a cell and then say when that cell equals a particular value to stop. Now in this case I went in and I set up a sum all, so it would sum up the total number of volunteers that people submitted. So here someone could submit 1, 2, 3, 4 volunteers, and when that number equaled, say 10, it would stop accepting forms. There are issues with this, however, in that we don't have a greater than function here. We have an equals function, and that's the problem, because if I jump right over that number, if I go from 9 to 11, it doesn't seem to work too well. So you may find that Form Limiter with the third option has its restrictions. This one's not always as easy to use. The next add-on I'd like to look at is something called Choice Eliminator. We can turn that on here. It's Choice Eliminator 2, second version, and we'll configure that. And first let's take a look at our form. My form asks for your name, and then it has a multiple choice where you can choose one president. And I'll say this question is going to be asking students to pick a president because that they're going to write a biography on. The second question is we're going to have a big President's Day party, and these are things that students can volunteer to bring in. Okay, you can see that this is the data sheet that's associated with this particular form. If I had multiple sheets, I could pick alternate sheets as well. But for right now, I'm going to pick these, and I'm going to pick the first question and choose to eliminate. After a second or so, it'll say it's eliminated choices. Now there are some options here. If I click on the gear next to eliminate choices, you'll see that what it's really doing is keeping track of how many times each of these things have been picked, and this number here is giving the limit. So it would be possible for me to click an X and just excuse Monroe from this whole deal, so you could pick as many of him as you wanted. I could also make an adjustment here and say, you know what, we're going to use 5 presidents, but more than one student. Up to 3 students can do any single president. We just don't want everybody doing Washington. Okay, so various settings you can make in there. You can also restore choices. So if you started this and some kids had selected some stuff and you kind of wanted to zero it out and use it again, you would just hit Restore Choices. Those are the main functions that you would set here. Let's go down and see about the second question. I'm going to eliminate choices for those as well. Okay, and now as students pick these things, when the third person picks Washington, Adams, or Jefferson, this choice will simply disappear for those who are viewing the form after that point. Since we didn't change the number associated with each of these, the first time somebody picks one of these options, it will disappear as a choice. And that's Choice Eliminator. One thing to know is that with Choice Eliminator, there is a little bug, and it happened when Google released the new forms. You can read about it in notes from the developer, right in the little control station over here. And that is that if two people have opened up the form, as long as those forms are open, they will retain these choices. Even if one of those people submits and say picks the last Washington, that should disappear. If the other person's already opened the form before that point, they're going to be able to make that selection as well. So that unfortunately is a little problem that was introduced with the new version of Google Forms. Okay, the next add-on I'd like to look at is an add-on named Check It Out. And I'm going to use it in this example to check in and out Chromebooks from the Chromebook cart. So to start with, you'd have to add the add-on. Once you've added it once, it'll be available to you here. And this is the check in or out set name. And I'm just going to call this Chromebooks. I'm going to change it to multiple choice. And it's going to create for me two questions. One showing the Chromebooks that are currently available and one showing the Chromebooks that have checked out. Now if none are available, this is the message that will be displayed, but you can customize that. If none have been checked out, this is the message that will display. So let's add this now. And see, it added the words check out and check in before my title. So check out Chromebooks, check in Chromebooks. And I'm going to add a couple of Chromebooks in here. So Chromebook 1. And I paused the video and put 6 in there. Now, if you were to view this form, put in my name, and I'm going to say that I checked out Chromebook 1. I'm going to close the form, or I could submit another response. What you'll notice is that's now moved down into the checked out section. So now if I select it again, it will be checking it back in. Be aware that at times you may have to refresh the page, especially if you're coming back from this submit another response. I would probably disable this actually, because students are usually going to just check one out and not have to revisit this page until sometime later. Okay, the next add-on is something called GMath for Forms, and this is just something that allows math teachers to insert equations, graphs, statistical information a little easier. Okay, so the add-on again is called GMath in parentheses for Forms. There are versions of this for docs and sheets as well. And let's just start with graphing a math expression. You can see there's a simple tab and an advanced tab. Let's just start with a simple tab. Okay, and by clicking this little arrow, this will appear here, along with the question. So it's giving you an... Notice the equation doesn't seem to display. This is simply an alignment button. If we were looking at the actual form online, where the tools weren't available, you'd see that the complete formula was there. Okay, and then there's a question here. And we'll leave that as a short answer. There are other things that you can put in as well. There's an advanced editor over here. There's a tutorial under the gear. But if you're simply looking for something else, you can create a graph. Let's look at that. Okay, and let's just leave the function that's here as an example, but you can, as a mathematician, be able to enter your own formulas, and then there's some options down at the bottom. Graph the line of best fit if there are points on it. Show the points as it crosses the axis. So when you're done with this one, you simply say insert. There's also a preview button if you want to do that first, and you can see that that is now inserted nicely into a Google form. Okay, I won't go through all of these, but there is a create a statistical display, create a handwriting entry where you can just write out a picture and include that, and deploy GMath for responses to this form as well. So various other options in GMath. Those who have need of that should look into it a little further. Data Director for Forms is the final Google Form add-on that we're going to look at. Very powerful application that allows us to do a couple of things. Okay, the first thing is when you open this originally, it's going to be in an off state. Know that you'll have to turn it on, and then you'll have to come back into change or view settings. There is an option up here to donate to the people who created this, and there are several options underneath. We're going to look at the PDF definition, the email settings, and the alternate destination. Calendar settings allow you to create a form that will automatically input the date and time and title onto a Google Calendar. I find it somewhat limited because it's going to output it into my Google Calendar, not the person who's filling out the form. So that's why we're not going to cover it in detail, but know that it's there. Okay, first let's look at alternate destinations. With all of these different features, you have to turn them on. So even though the add-on is on, we have to turn on each section. Okay, and where do I want this? Basically, this is allowing me to submit this data into multiple places. So the form is going to submit it into one sheet, but I can actually create an additional sheet, or I can choose one from my drive. I can tell it to include certain things. Save that. And then when somebody fills out this form, not only will the data go to its original location, but it will also go to that second form. There is a link to get some help. It's actually gives you some brief help on the site here. And there's a link at the bottom which would bring you to a Google site, which has some more information about how to use this particular application. Okay, let's look at the other possibilities besides this alternate destination. One is to create a PDF, and if we take a look at this form, I'm collecting first name, last name, email, favorite subject from these four, and best day for extra help. So to look at this in its actual form view, you'd see that that one winds up being a grid. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is to go to PDF definition. And what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to create up to 2 different forms of PDF based on the information that's submitted. So this is PDF 1. I'm going to turn that on. These are just margin settings, 50 pixels all around, but you can adjust that. And then down here I can construct a PDF file with my own text and, let me just put in first name, and data from the form. So now it's going to say first name. So I've gone ahead and completed the rest of that. I put first name, last name, favorite subject, and the results of their survey, extra help and the results of what they submitted, and a little bit of text. Notice there are some HTML buttons, but they're very limited.